I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that you have dedicated your entire existence to a singular definition of success. You've risked your life for it, you've begged for money for it, and you've dragged yourself through the literal worst weather on planet Earth for it. And then, when you are tantalizingly close, I'm talking within touching distance, close enough to feel like you've already won, you stop, you turn around, and you walk away.
It sounds like a nightmare scenario. In our current culture, that's a failure. You didn't ship the product, you didn't close the deal, you didn't win the gold.
Exactly. But here is the kicker, and this is why we are here today. Because of that decision to walk away, this man is remembered not as a quitter, but as arguably the greatest leader who ever lived.
It is a massive paradox. If you look at his resume on paper strictly by the metrics of his era, it reads like a list of catastrophes.
Right.
He never reached the South Pole. He lost his ship in the ice. He died essentially broken in debt. And yet, if you go to a management seminar today or talk to military historians or even just, look at who modern astronauts admire.
They don't look to the guys who planted the flags.
No. They look to the man who failed.
Today, we are doing a deep dive into the life, the near deaths, and the enduring legacy of Sir Ernest Shackleton. And we have a serious stack of sources to get through.
We do.
We've got the biographies, we've got the expedition logs from the Discovery, the Nimrod, and of course the famous Endurance, and we're even pulling in the very recent news about the rediscovery of his lost ships, which adds a whole new layer to the story.
Our mission here is really to unpack that paradox he started with. We are going back to the heroic age of Antarctic exploration, which, let's be honest, was a time when going south was basically like going to Mars.
But with wool sweaters instead of spacesuits.
Exactly. And no radio contact. We want to understand how a restless Anglo-Irish merchant Navy officer became the person you pray for when disaster strikes.
There's the famous quote about that, which we have to save for later because it's just too good. But for you, our listener, as we wade into this, I want you to think about this not just as history. This is a masterclass in resilience, in the art of knowing when to quit, which nobody teaches us, and how to manage a team when you are stuck in a frozen hellscape for 2 years with no hope of rescue.
It really is the ultimate case study in crisis management. But to understand the manager and to understand why he made the choices he did, we have to understand the man. Because Shackleton was not your typical Edwardian explorer.
No.
He didn't fit the mold.
Right. Let's unpack his background. Because when I picture a British explorer from the early 1900s, I have a very specific archetype in my head.
Stiff upper lip.
Yes, stiff upper lip, background at Eton or Harrow, and a commission in the Royal Navy. Very aristocratic. But Shackleton was a bit of an outsider, wasn't he?
He was, and that outsider status is absolutely key to his leadership style. He was born in 1874 in County Kildare, Ireland. So right off the bat, he has this Anglo-Irish heritage.
Okay.
His father was a farmer who eventually retrained as a doctor and moved the family to London when Ernest was 10. But the young Shackleton, he just didn't fit into the academic box.
He wasn't a school person.
Not at all. He was bored by school. He was a voracious reader. He could quote Keats and Browning at length. But he hated the structure of formal education.
So he skips the university road entirely.
Completely. At 16, he joins the Merchant Navy. Now, we need to pause here because the distinction between the Merchant Navy and the Royal Navy in Victorian England is massive.
Right.
It's not just two different fleets, it's two different social universes.
Break that down for us. Why does that matter so much?
Well, the Royal Navy, which is where his future rival, Captain Scott, came from, was incredibly hierarchical. It was rigid, you had the officers who were gentlemen, and you had the crew, and never the twain shall meet.
A huge class divide.
A chasm. Discipline was top-down. But Shackleton goes into the merchant service. He learns his trade before the mast on sailing vessels. That means he's hauling ropes, he's scrubbing decks, he's eating the same terrible food as the deckhands. He is mixing with people from all walks of life, all social classes.
So he's getting a real-world education in human nature. He's not just issuing orders from a bridge. He's, seeing how the sausage is made, so to speak.
That's a perfect way to put it. He learned how to handle men not by pointing at a rank badge, but by personality, by influence. He saw what made men work hard and what made them mutiny. By the time he joins the Union Castle Line and eventually talks his way onto his first Antarctic expedition, he has a very different worldview than his contemporaries. He's rougher, perhaps, but also significantly more adaptable.
And he creates this opportunity for himself by talking his way onto the Discovery expedition in 1901. This is led by Captain Robert Falcon Scott.
Yes.
This is the big leagues. This is the British National Antarctic Expedition. But this is also where the trouble starts, isn't it?
It is, and it sets the stage for everything that follows. The Discovery Expedition was run on strict Royal Navy lines. Shackleton was the third officer. He was charismatic, he was funny, and he was popular with the crew, maybe a little too popular for Scott's liking.
Oh.
Scott was a bit more introverted, a bit more rigid.
It sounds like a personality clash waiting to happen.
It was. But they, along with Edward Wilson, make a push for the South Pole. They set a new farthest south record, getting to 82 degrees 17 minutes south.
Which, to be fair, is a huge achievement for the time.
It was massive. But the journey itself was a disaster. They didn't understand nutrition, so they had scurvy.
Right.
They didn't really understand how to manage the dogs, so the dogs died. And on the return trip, Shackleton physically broke down. He had severe respiratory issues, likely exacerbated by the scurvy. He had to be helped, and at times carried on the sledge.
That must have been deeply humiliating for him.
Oh, incredibly so. And when they finally got back to the ship, Scott made a decision. He sent Shackleton home early on the relief ship.
Ouch. The sent home card.
Yeah.
That has to sting.
It was a career ender, potentially. Scott cited health grounds, saying Shackleton shouldn't risk another winter. But there has always been speculation, and our sources point to this heavily, that Scott was perhaps jealous of Shackleton's popularity.
Or just didn't like his style.
Or just found his informal style irritating. There's a report that Scott told the ship's doctor, if he doesn't go back sick, he will go back in disgrace.
Wow. So he's basically kicked off the team. That creates a serious chip on the shoulder, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
That's the fuel.
Precisely. He returns to England, not as a conqueror, but as a man with something to prove. He feels he was pushed out. He needs to return to the Antarctic. He needs to outdo Scott. He needs to show the world and Scott that he is capable of the prize. And this leads us to the Nimrod expedition of 1907.
Okay, let's look at Nimrod, because I feel like everyone talks about the Endurance, and we will, trust me, we will get there.
Yeah.
But the Nimrod expedition contains maybe the most badass decision in exploration history.
It's certainly the most heartbreaking and arguably the most mature decision ever made on the ice. So Shackleton raises the money, mostly from wealthy friends and loans he couldn't really afford.
Right. He was always hustling for cash.
Always. And he goes back. His goal is the pole. Simple as that.
And they do incredible things on this trip. I was reading they climbed Mount Erebus, which is an active volcano, in Antarctica.
Yes, a team climbed Erebus, an astonishing feat. They also located the South Magnetic Pole. But the main event was the Great Southern Journey. Shackleton and 3 companions, Frank Wild, Eric Marshall, and Jameson Adams, marched south.
Okay.
They discovered the Beardmore Glacier, which is this massive gateway to the polar plateau. They are the first human beings to ever set foot on the South Polar Plateau.
They are walking into the absolute unknown. And they get close. How close are we talking?
They make it to 88 degrees, 23 minutes south. That is 97 miles from the South Pole.
97 miles. That is, I mean, in a car, that's an hour and a half on the highway.
It's nothing.
Even walking, that's a few days. They were right there.
They had marched hundreds of miles. They were closer than anyone had ever been. They could probably see the sky changing over the pole. But they were starving. They were running on half rations.
And they were exhausted.
They were literally dying on their feet.
Most people, driven by that kind of ego and ambition, having come that far, would have gambled. They would have said, we'll find a way, let's just get there.
Scott likely would have gone on, but Shackleton stopped. He did the math. He realized they had enough supplies to get to the pole, but not enough to get back.
So they would plant the flag, claim the glory.
And then they would be dead bodies on the return journey.
So it's a choice between a glorious death or a shameful survival.
Yeah.
Or what some would call a shameful survival.
Exactly. On January 9, 1909, Shackleton made the decision to turn back. He wrote in his diary about the decision, but the most telling comment came later when he was back in England talking to his wife, Emily. She asked him about it, and he simply said, "A live donkey is better than a dead lion, isn't it?"
A live donkey is better than a dead lion. That is such a powerful summary of his philosophy. The goal matters, but people matter more.
And the return journey proved he was right. It was a race against death. There's this incredible anecdote from the diaries involving Frank Wild to illustrate just how close they were to the edge. Wild was sick, basically dying of dysentery and starvation. At one point, Shackleton took his own daily ration, a single biscuit, and forced Wild to eat it.
One biscuit.
One biscuit. But in that environment, that biscuit is life. Frank Wilde wrote in his diary, "All the money that was ever minted would not have bought that biscuit, and the remembrance of that sacrifice will never leave me."
Wow.
That is the loyalty Shackleton inspired. He didn't just command, he sacrificed. He managed the team by serving the team.
So he comes back a hero. He's knighted. He's Sir Ernest Shackleton now.
Yeah.
But he didn't reach the pole. And then the worst thing happens for his ambition. Roald Amundsen, the Norwegian, beats everyone to it in 1911.
Yep.
And then Scott gets there a month later and dies on the way back. The race is over.
Exactly. The prize is gone. The map is filled in. So what does a restless explorer do?
He moves the goalpost.
He invents a new prize. Shackleton conceives of the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. If he can't be the first to the pole, he will be the first to cross the entire continent from sea to sea, passing through the pole.
This is the setup for the Endurance. And I love the stories about the recruitment for this. We have to address the elephant in the room, that famous ad. Men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success.
It is a legendary ad. It's quoted in marketing textbooks everywhere. It's on motivational posters. The only problem is, our sources suggest it's likely a myth.
No, I wanted that to be true so bad.
I know. It captures the spirit perfectly. But researchers have scoured the newspapers of the time and haven't been able to find the original copy.
Okay, but even if the ad isn't real, the response was right.
Oh, yeah. What isn't a myth is that he had over 5,000 applicants.
5,000 people signing up for what sounds like a miserable time.
Yeah.
And his interview process was unique.
Very eccentric. He wasn't looking for technical skills alone. He was looking for temperament. He asked Reginald James, the physicist, if he could sing.
If he could sing. For a polar expedition.
Yes. Because Shackleton knew that being stuck in a tent for 6 months with a guy who is annoying or depressive is more dangerous than the cold.
That makes so much sense.
He needed morale. He needed good tent mates. He asked others just 1 or 2 questions and hired them on a hunch. He was casting a reality show as much as he was hiring a crew.
He knew that technical skills can be taught, but personality is fixed.
Exactly. He selected 28 men for the Endurance. They set sail in 1914, just as World War I is breaking out.
Right. I read that he offered his ship and crew to the government for the war effort.
He did. But Winston Churchill, who was First Lord of the Admiralty then, told him to proceed.
So they head south, they enter the Weddell Sea, and this is where the Endurance meets its match.
The Weddell Sea is notoriously dangerous. It's a gyre, which means the currents swirl the ice around and pack it tight against the Antarctic Peninsula. A natural ice trap, and the ice conditions that year were terrible. By January 1915, the ship becomes frozen fast in an ice floe. They are stuck. They can't move forward. They can't move back. They are drifting north with the pack ice.
And this is where the leadership really kicks in. Because I imagine you are stuck on a wooden ship, it's freezing, the sun is going down for the winter, morale could tank very, very quickly.
That was Shackleton's biggest fear: depression, boredom, and cliques. So he converted the ship into a winter station. He kept the hierarchy loose.
Ah, back to his merchant navy roots.
Exactly. He made the scientists and officers scrub the floors alongside the sailors again, breaking down those class barriers. He organized theatrical performances, soccer games on the ice, dog sled races. He kept them busy and he kept them social. He was constantly monitoring the mental temperature of the crew.
He was managing their minds as much as their survival.
He was. But the ice doesn't care about morale. In October 1915, the pressure from the ice became too much. The floes started to crush the hull. It sounds terrifying in the diaries. The sound of massive timbers snapping like matchsticks, the rigging screaming.
I can't even imagine.
Shackleton realizes the ship is lost. He gives the order: abandon ship. They move their supplies onto the ice.
And then, in November, the ship sinks. It just slips under the ice.
There is a moment there that defines the whole expedition. The ship, their only link to civilization, their warmth, their safety disappears. They are standing on a frozen sheet of ocean, thousands of miles from help, with no radio.
Panic would be the natural reaction. Terror.
It would be. But Shackleton gathers the men and calmly says, "Ship and stores have gone, so now we'll go home."
So now we'll go home. Like it's just a change of itinerary.
He immediately reframed the disaster. It wasn't "we're doomed," it was "we have a new mission." Survival. He didn't let them dwell on what was lost.
So they are camping on ice floes. The ice is melting as summer approaches. They're drifting. This goes on for months. This is the part of the story that gives me anxiety just reading it.
It's terrifying.
You are sleeping on a sheet of ice that could crack open under your tent at any moment.
And it did crack. The floes started breaking up in April 1916. Shackleton realizes they have to move or they will fall into the ocean. They load into the 3 small lifeboats they salvaged from the Endurance. They are aiming for Elephant Island, a desolate rock about 100 miles away.
And this boat journey, 5 days in open lifeboats in Antarctic waters.
It was harrowing. They were soaked, freezing, dehydrated. They had saltwater boils. They were rowing through pack ice, dodging killer whales.
When they finally landed on Elephant Island, it was the first time they had stood on solid land in 497 days.
497 days. Imagine the relief. But Elephant Island isn't exactly a resort, is it?
It's a bleak, inhospitable rock. It's far outside any shipping lanes. It's covered in penguin guano and swept by gales.
So nobody was coming to look for them there? No. Shackleton realized that if they stayed, they would starve and die. He had to go get help.
And this leads to the voyage of the James Caird. This is the part that historians usually point to as the greatest small boat journey ever undertaken.
Without a doubt. Shackleton takes the largest lifeboat, the James Caird. It's only 20 feet long. He takes 5 men. Captain Worsley, the navigator, Tom Crean, the carpenter Harry McNish, and 2 others, Vincent and McCarthy.
Okay.
They have to sail 800 miles across the roughest ocean in the world, the Southern Ocean, in winter, to reach the whaling stations on South Georgia.
800 miles.
Yeah.
In a 20-foot boat with hurricane-force winds.
And waves the size of houses. We are talking about the furious 50s. The waves are rolling around the globe unimpeded. And the navigation, what Worsley did was a miracle.
How do you do it?
He was navigating by catching momentary glimpses of stars through the storm clouds. He had to stand up, braced by 2 other men, and try to use a sextant in a boat that was bucking like a rodeo horse.
If he's off by even a degree.
If he was off by even a degree, they would miss the island completely. Next stop, Antarctica or oblivion. They would be swept out into the Atlantic to die of thirst.
There's a detail in the source material about a storm they survived that actually sank a 500-ton steamer nearby.
That's right, a 500-ton ship. And they survived in a lifeboat. At one point, they thought they saw the sky clearing, a line of white light. Shackleton called out that it was clearing. But then he realized it wasn't the sky. It was the white foam of a massive rogue wave.
That is terrifying.
He yelled, "Hold on, it's got us!" They were buried in water. The boat was half swamped. They were bailing for their lives with sleeping bags, pots, anything they could grab.
And it held together?
The boat held together largely because McNish, the carpenter, had improvised a decking out of sledge runners and canvas before they left.
The carpenter, McNish.
Mm-hmm.
He was a difficult character, wasn't he? He'd rebelled earlier on the ice.
He had. He was a grumbler, a bit of a mutineer. But Shackleton took him on the boat because he knew he needed the best carpenter. And he also knew it was better to keep a troublemaker close where he could watch him, rather than leave him behind to praise the morale of the main group.
Smart. So they make it. They spot South Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, because nothing can be easy for Ernest Shackleton.
Never.
They land on the wrong side of the island.
Right. They crash land in King Haakon Bay. The boat is battered, the rudder is gone, the whaling stations and the people are on the other side. Between them lies the interior of South Georgia, uncharted glaciers, jagged peaks, snowfields.
And nobody had ever crossed it.
No one.
And they can't sail around, so they have to walk.
Shackleton, Worsley, and Tom Crean. They leave the other 3, who are too weak to walk, under the overturned boat on the beach. The 3 men set off. They have no climbing gear.
Nothing.
They took screws from the lifeboat and put them into the soles of their boots for grip.
Improvised crampons. I love that detail. It's so MacGyver.
They hiked for 36 hours straight. If they stopped to sleep, they would freeze. They had to make decisions on the fly. At one point, they were trapped on a ridge with night falling and fog rolling in. They couldn't stay, and they couldn't climb down, so they sat on coils of rope like sleds and launched themselves into the fog.
A leap of faith.
Literally. They slid down 2,000 feet in a few minutes. If there had been rocks at the bottom, they would have died, but it leveled out into a snowbank. And this trek is where the third man factor comes in.
Yes, tell us about that. This feels almost supernatural.
Later, all 3 men independently admitted that they felt a presence. They felt like there were 4 of them, not 3.
4 of them?
Yeah. Worsley said he often found himself counting the party and getting to 4. It's a phenomenon often reported by people in extreme survival situations. The sense that something or someone is guiding you.
Whether it was a hallucination from exhaustion or something else, it got them there. They hear the steam whistle of the whaling station.
That sound must have been the sweetest music they ever heard. I can only imagine what the station manager thought when these 3 wild-looking men, black with blubber smoke, hair matted, clothes and rags, walked out of the mountains.
The station manager asked, "Who the hell are you?" And Shackleton replied, "My name is Shackleton."
It must have been a ghost story come to life. Everyone in the world thought they had died 2 years ago.
But the mission wasn't over. He had left 3 men on the other side of South Georgia and 22 men back on Elephant Island.
And this is where Shackleton's tenacity is just relentless. He doesn't rest. He doesn't take a week off.
No.
He picks up the 3 on the other side of South Georgia immediately. But getting to Elephant Island was harder. The pack ice was still thick. He tried with a whaler blocked by ice, tried with an Argentine ship blocked, a British schooner engine trouble.
He's failing over and over, and meanwhile, the men on Elephant Island have been there for 4 months. They are living under upturned boats, eating penguins, staring at the horizon.
They have no idea.
They don't know if Shackleton survived.
Finally, he gets a tug from the Chilean Navy, the Yelcho. It wasn't an icebreaker. It was a small tug, but he pushes through. On August 30, 1916, 4 months after he left them, Shackleton breaks through the mist. He counts the figures on the beach through his binoculars. He turns to Worsley and says, "They are all there."
They are all there. Not a single life lost among the Endurance crew.
It's the miracle of the age.
Right.
Now, we should note for accuracy, there was a support party on the other side of the continent, the Ross Sea Party, who were laying depots for the crossing that never happened.
Right.
They did lose 3 men, including their commander, so the expedition as a whole was not without casualty. But the survival of the Endurance crew, under Shackleton's direct command, is flawless.
So he comes back to civilization. But the world has changed. It's 1916. The First World War is slaughtering millions. Shackleton returns. And suddenly, his survival story, while amazing, is overshadowed by the massive loss of life in Europe.
He felt very out of place. He was an Edwardian hero in a modern mechanized war. He was too old for conscription, though he volunteered. He served in northern Russia for a bit during the Civil War intervention there. But he was restless. His business ventures failed.
He was heavily in debt.
Terribly in debt. He was a man who only really made sense on the ice.
It's like he couldn't function in normal society. He needed the crisis to feel alive.
Exactly. So in 1921, he launches one last expedition, the Quest Expedition. It was vague in its goals, oceanography, subantarctic islands, but really it was just an excuse to go back, to go home to the south.
But his health was failing. He'd been hiding heart problems for years, hadn't he?
Yes. He had suspected heart issues even back in the Nimrod days. On the way south with the Quest, he had a heart attack in Rio but refused to stop. They arrived at South Georgia, the scene of his greatest triumph, on January 4th, 1922.
And there's a poignant conversation with the ship's doctor, Macklin.
Yes. Macklin was called to Shackleton's cabin in the middle of the night. Shackleton was in pain. Macklin told him he needed to change his lifestyle, to stop overworking, to take it easy.
And Shackleton's response is just perfect.
It is. He looked at him and asked, "You are always wanting me to give up things. What is it I ought to give up?" Macklin said, "Chiefly alcohol, boss." Moments later, Shackleton suffered a massive heart attack and died. He was 47.
47. That is incredibly young. He literally gave his heart to the Antarctic.
His wife, Emily, asked that he be buried there on South Georgia. So he lies there today among the whalers. It's a fitting end.
Now let's talk about the legacy. Because when he died, he wasn't considered the top explorer, right? Scott was the golden boy.
For a long time, Scott was the Victorian ideal, the tragic hero who died for his country. Shackleton was respected, but he was seen as a bit of a maverick, maybe a bit chaotic.
A brilliant failure, maybe.
Exactly. But in the later 20th century, the narrative flipped. We started to learn more about Scott's rigidity, his mistakes with the dogs and ponies, and simultaneously, we started to value Shackleton's adaptability.
It's the shift from valuing heroic death to valuing survival and emotional intelligence.
Precisely. Business schools started using Shackleton as a case study. How to build a team, how to pivot when the strategy fails, how to maintain hope. He became the model for modern leadership.
And there is that quote by Raymond Priestley, who knew both men. I teased it in the intro.
Yes, it's the best summary of all, Priestley said. Scott for scientific method, Amundsen for speed and efficiency. But when disaster strikes and all hope is gone, get down on your knees and pray for Shackleton.
That gives me chills. It's the acknowledgement that when the plan goes out the window, you don't want the guy who follows the rule book. You want the guy who can improvise.
And his legacy has been very tangible recently. In 2022, the Falklands Maritime Heritage Trust found the wreck of the Endurance. It was 3,000 meters down in the Weddell Sea.
And it looked pristine. I saw the photos. The cold water preserved it. You can still read the name on the stern?
It's incredible. The Antarctic waters don't have the wood-eating worms that destroy ships elsewhere. It looks like it sank yesterday. And just recently, in June 2024, they found the wreck of the Quest, his final ship, off the coast of Newfoundland.
Wow.
So even the physical remnants of his life are resurfacing. It's keeping the story alive.
It feels like he's still with us, in a way. So bringing this all back to the listener, what does this mean for us? We aren't stuck on ice floes, hopefully, but we all face failures. We all have projects that sink.
Shackleton teaches us that the goal isn't the only thing. He failed at the pole, he failed at the crossing, but he succeeded at the human element. He brought his people home.
That was his real success.
That was his true north. He realized that a live donkey is better than a dead lion. It's a lesson in redefining success. Sometimes success is just surviving the storm with your humanity intact.
And looking at your own failed projects, maybe the business that didn't launch or the career path that dead-ended, and asking, did I get the people out alive? Did I learn? Was there a success hidden inside the failure?
Exactly. Shackleton proves that you can lose the ship, lose the money, lose the race, and still win the history books if you lead with empathy and resilience.
A fascinating figure, a failure and a legend. Sir Ernest Shackleton. That's it for this deep dive.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one thought to mull over. We mentioned the third man, that presence that guided them across the mountains. We usually dismiss it as hallucination or stress, but in a world that is increasingly data-driven and logical, Shackleton's story reminds us that there is a spiritual, almost mystical component to human endurance. When we are at our absolute limit, when we have exhausted all our resources, do we tap into something else? Was it just brain chemistry, or was it the ultimate manifestation of the will to live? Something to think about next time you're pushing through your own impossible journey.
Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next dive.